Wow, I knew what it was a minute ago and I just forgot it, but I'll remember in a minute. Before we get started, though, let's just take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding into your lungs and flowing into your bloodstream and enlightening and enlivening and invigorating your cells with bright, vital energy. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, any stress. And now take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant bright light lighting you up from the inside out, vibrating all those electrons, all those molecules, electrifying your cells and bringing vital life energy in its energetic, vibrant, brilliant light form into your body and being and beyond. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, any stress, any fatigue or negativity. And now let's just gently press our palms together, softly, softly. Rub your fingers against your palms and feel that delicious sensation of your fingertips tingling and your palms feeling tickled, and bring yourselves present right here, right now. So, this morning's topic is overcoming inertia. You know, when we feel stuck or stalled, how do we get ourselves back into the flow of life and inspiration? Good morning, Tammy. Welcome, welcome. And hi, Irma. So good to have you guys here. Welcome, everybody. We're talking about overcoming inertia. So, if you've ever felt stuck, like you have so much to do and you just can't get yourself moving, and you know what I'm talking about. So, what does it look like to overcome inertia? And so, there's less resistance. There's a basic law of physics is that there's less resistance when something is already in motion, right? So once something is in motion, it's easier to redirect. But when something is stopped, it takes a lot more energy to get it rolling. And so when we're stopped, what can we do to get ourselves rolling in the direction of inspired action? And my thinking about that is on some level, and it's an unfortunate dynamic, but on some level I think part of what has to happen is that we get just fed up with being in inertia, that we get fed up with being stuck, we get fed up with being stalled, because as human beings, it's an maybe I say unfortunate thing, but it's certainly a common thing that pain is a motivator. So pain and discomfort is a great motivator to have us do something that we're resisting. And that brings up another point. Inertia is, I don't think it's a neutral state. I don't think that inertia is something that is just benign. I think that in a certain way, it's at least in human forms. I don't know if this is the case in physics, but in human forms, I think that inertia is characterized by resistance. And when it comes down to it, I think that, again, working hypothesis, that most of our life issues are boiled down to some form of resistance. So we get to discuss that. Hello, Elaine. Welcome, welcome. Blissful now to you too. What beautiful emojis you put in. That's gorgeous. So, yeah, we're talking about inertia. And uh, good morning, Tammy. Welcome. Wonderful to have everybody here today. So, in talking about inertia, we're also moving into a little bit of a conversation about resistance and what are the ways that we can reduce resistance. and bring ourselves back into the flow. Because that's, again, what is inertia? It's sort of sitting outside the flow, or resisting being in the flow of activity and action. So good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here. So when we're thinking about inertia, it is being at a stall. And if indeed, hypothetically, we're entertaining the hypothesis that part of the reason that we're in a stall is because we're resisting something, what we might do is find something that we're less resistant to. So let's say I'm just a really mundane existence. Let's say I feel that, good morning, Robert, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. Let's say I feel like, yes, the house really needs to be cleaned and I just can't get myself to do it. And I'm just in inertia, I'm stalled. So it may be that by redirecting our attention to something that we don't have as much resistance to, we can get in motion. And once we're in motion, then we can move ourselves in the direction of the thing that we're desiring to accomplish, or the thing that we've been avoiding in some way. Because inertia, in, again, a human sense, when we're kind of stuck and in a stall, we're avoiding the thing that we're not taking inspired action, or that we're not inspired about, let's say. So how can we manufacture that inspiration? So much of, well, pretty much everything that we address in terms of how we can expand our sense of, this is a somewhat dried up apple core that Maggie's eating, by the way. So the thing that I've noticed is that when I'm in action, there are, I caution always against being a human doing rather than a human being. You know, like I have so much to do. Ow, she really bit me hard. Maggie, you get to get off of me right now. No, sorry guys, she's attacking me. Okay, so I find that when I'm in action, literally doing something, then it's easier for me to flow into doing something else. And when I just can't get myself up to do anything, obviously I'm not getting the things done that I have intentions of doing. What we want to be looking at is how we're being in the context of the doing that we do, right? But in the meantime, right now, we're talking about being in action. And so thinking of something fun to kick things off can make a difference. And maybe even something like just choosing to do a silly dance or turn on some music and allow yourself to just sort of play. Movement, any kind of movement, literally helps you to get in movement, and it starts mobilizing and makes it harder to stay stuck. If we're stuck emotionally, same thing. Now, yes, you have to find a place to muster the will to turn on the music and do a dance, or you could sing, or you could just jump around. And yes, it takes the will to do that. So where does that will come from? Again, I'll circle back. Maybe it comes around from being at a place of enough discomfort in the stall or the stuckness that you have a willingness to get yourself out of it. So I don't know about you, but there have been times when I've just been sitting around doing nothing and feeling like I have all this stuff that I truly desire to get done. And I just get fed up with myself. Sometimes there's a conversation about what, why can't I do this? Well, that's not the best conversation. The better conversation would be, what would it take to get me to do this? We typically will berate ourselves in a way that keeps us stuck and further embeds the undesired behavior. One of the things we can do is say, okay, well, what would it take? What would it take to get unstuck here? What would it take to get me up out of this chair to do something? Well, what would be fun? What would make it more fun? Those are great questions. Good morning, Andrea. Welcome, welcome. We're talking about getting unstuck, essentially. We're talking about breaking through inertia and ways that we can go about that, and what are the dynamics of it. Another thing that we can look at is, well, what are we resisting? And when we think about what are we resisting, then we can say, well, what would I enjoy? Because what's the opposite of resistance? Resistance is like a fending off, and enjoyment is a calling in. So what would pull me forward? What would help to elevate me literally from my seat to a space where I'm in action, and then I can accomplish what my objectives are more directly. So, for instance, if I go back to my example about cleaning, one of the things that I know for me is an inhibitor is feeling overwhelmed that, oh my gosh, it's such a big job. Whether it is or not, that's the perception. So by giving yourself just a little objective. So one of the things that can keep us stuck is feeling in overwhelm, or feeling like we don't know where to start or what steps to take. And we, even in those situations where we're feeling overwhelmed, it's likely that we can identify at least a first step. It's likely that we can. So as soon as I said that, what came into my mind was, well, I don't know where to start. So not knowing where to start, you can still say, okay, I don't know where to start, but if I did know where to start, where might I start? It's not like there's the right start. Maybe I can just start by standing up, or maybe I can start by taking out a pen and a notebook to start jotting down some notes, or pull up something on the computer where I can make notes of what my steps might be. I've worked with people who have, when they're faced with a project, they're facing this inertia and resistance and fear and fear of the unknown. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And that can be crippling if you allow yourself to stay there. Good morning, Abdullah Fattah. Welcome. It's great to have you here. It can be really helpful to just take a moment to sketch out a picture. So maybe the picture's overwhelming. Maybe the reason the overwhelm is there is because there is no picture. And I think that that's often the case, is that one of the reasons that we end up in a stall is because we truly don't know where to start, because we haven't thought things through. We don't have an overarching image or idea or conversation about what this thing is that we want to accomplish. In the case of cleaning the house or the apartment or whatever, as that I was using as an example, maybe I don't have a strategy mapped out. And that's why it's overwhelming. And then when I do have the strategy mapped out, let's say that I do take that as my first step, then I can, instead of requiring that I do all of it, I can say, okay, well, I'm just going to start by cleaning out the kitchen sink. You know, I'm going to start by cleaning off the counter. And I'm going to allow myself to just do that if that's what it takes. The thing about that is that you are then in action. You are then in the process of movement. And then it's easy from that moment, it's easier to say, oh, okay, well, I got the counter clean. You know what? Let me clear off that surface. And you know what? Maybe I'll sweep the floor. And then you can move back into inspiration because you've lost the resistance. You've overcome that resistance. So Rosalind says meditative walking, or if you can't get outside, coloring books with lots of colorful pencils or markers could help move through thoughts about a task. Well, that's really interesting. You know, meditative walking, I know that Joe Dispenza, I don't know if you guys are familiar. I know that Irma is, and Joe Dispenza has tons of meditations that are to support us in creating the world that we dream of for ourselves, the lives that we dream of. And he has an intensive week-long program. And in that program, I know that they do a lot of walking meditation or meditative walking. And I have to say, it's not a practice that I've engaged in. So now, Rosalind, you've teased me into exploring that. I think that's a brilliant idea. And coloring books with colors and beautiful shapes, for sure, these things can help to move into a different space. I wouldn't have thought about doing that when it relates to a task, but it makes sense, particularly if the task is a creative task, something um, that that calls for deep inspiration. So I've noticed that there have been areas of particular creativity where creativity about a big project that I've felt stalled about. And one of the ways to address that that's been effective for me is essentially similar to the meditative walking or coloring in a coloring book, but doing something that is enjoyable, something that I can immerse myself in. Like, I like to take photographs. So what I've done sometimes is I've just gone out and taken photographs. Now, what's great about that and great about what you're suggesting, Rosalind, is that it's shifting the focus to something that is more expansive and requires more presence, is calling for more presence. And so with those, we'll call distractions, they're not really distractions. It's kind of like priming the pump. The idea about priming the pump is that you need to give a couple pumps before the pump is actually going to start moving, right? So there's some activity that is creative focus that then allows you to release the resistance. She just wiped apple on my hat here from her beak. That is relieving the resistance. Ow, Maggie, no biting, no biting. Ow, no biting. Releasing the resistance that we might have had, or the anxiety or the pent up energy around whatever the objective was, or the project is, or the task that we're essentially avoiding by being in a place of stuckness. Also, the whole idea of diverting your mind into a calmer, meditative, more focused state just opens the floodgates and leaves room for more expression. So Robert said, I just did a meditative walking around 2 hours ago, listening to Louise Hay affirmations and just enjoying the world go by. That's beautiful, Robert. And my guess is that you weren't just watching the world go by, but you were being in it in a very different way. So probably appreciating it in a more connected and deeper way. So when we think about procrastination, that's really kind of what we're talking about, being stuck or stalled. What we're doing is we're not in the flow. We're kind of damming up all that energy, right? We're holding ourselves back from participation and movement into expression. And Rosalind says, from calm, we can be productive or create. Absolutely, because what are we doing? We're releasing that resistance. We're releasing that tension and that potential anxiety or fear around something. And so people have very different ways of dealing with stress. And some people avoid stress by doing. Other people avoid doing with stress, right? So, and maybe they're the same people. Maybe we're all the same people in that respect. But when we can calm ourselves and feel into a task, even one way is to divert our attention to something else in order to get things flowing, and then we're in a better state to think about the thing that we were previously stuck around. Another way is by putting attention on the thing itself to say, okay, well, maybe I'm just feeling overwhelmed. Where can I start? And it doesn't have to be the right place to start. There might be 95 different or more different ways to start something. So it's just a matter of saying, okay, well, if I were to think about the components of this, what might they be? And then as you're in motion around that question, other questions may come up, other ideas will start being generated, other activities can emerge from that. Why? Because you've stepped off the side of the stream and you've gotten into the flow. So or you might even say that, when we're stuck, we're standing in the stream, but we're just standing, and maybe being in the flow is laying on your back and allowing the energy of the stream to take you. So I am walking a tightrope here in this conversation to be cautious around making this a conversation about doing, because it's not. It's really a conversation about being, and then from that beingness comes inspired doing. And what we're looking to do is how to access that place of allowing ourselves to float along with the current of the stream. So Robert says, walking has a calming effect on the mental body, and I enjoy walking. But lately I've been stuck at home with not too much movement involved, so I needed to let the energy flow. Well, how perfect! A perfect metaphor, perfect explanation, right? When we're not in movement, we often feel stuck. When we're in movement, there's a lot more flow. And so that can be another way to be addressing this this sense of feeling of the inertia. You know, it's like there's this stuckness. Well, you could start by just moving your arms. You know, it doesn't have to, if you're sitting down, you could start by just moving your arms, and movement can lead to more movement, until finally you might get yourself up out of that chair if you're sitting down, and walk around or dance or whatever. You know, even just bouncing your head, in fact, can be a really, especially if we do it focused. Try that for right now. Just really gently close your eyes and just bounce your head gently, and feel what that feels like. You know, it's kind of creating a little bit of a, I'm feeling a lot of movement in my body, and it may be that it's moving lymph, it's moving cerebral spinal fluid to do that. Did you notice when you do that, if you close your eyes, that there's a lot of physical stuff that's going on, and it's energizing a bit and enlivening. I'm feeling energy into my shoulders and my arms. That was totally impromptu. I haven't done that before to experience that. But wow, there's a lot going on as a result of that. It's making me want to move my neck and head around a lot more. What's your experience? Is it doing that for you, or is it just my weirdness? It could be just my weird body. Oh, absolutely. So Rosalind says tapping also is a great thing to be able to shift out of an emotional and a physical state. Tapping is something that can be used for pain and for emotional upset. And actually, right now, I believe that the tapping summit is on. So I just saw a notification. If it's not on right yet, it's going to be on soon. So look up tapping. I think it's called Tapping Solutions, or it's the Tapping Solution, I believe, summit. Um, but it's a super powerful self-care technique for moving out of anxiety and frustration and all kinds of other states. And I would imagine it would be a great thing for moving out of feeling stuck. The thing that breaks the inertia is the will, ultimately, to break the inertia, right? So it means being, I'm sorry, I was just checking to see if Maggie was destroying something in the background there. Um, it means that we need to find a way to at least start some movement, whether it's mental movement, emotional movement, physical movement. And that oftentimes comes with just saying, okay, enough. Okay, enough. Like, even that has an action to it, it has an energy to it that's different from this inertial kind of energy. So there has to be the awareness, there has to be the impulse, the will, in order to move it forward. But once we have that spark, we can feed that spark and fan the flame and create more energy, because more energy creates more energy, until we get to that tipping point where we talked about yesterday, that, you know, when is more too much. But yeah, so we have all these different ways to access energy. And Robert says, yes, it does feel like a lot going on in the body when we just bounce our heads gently, like with your eyes closed. And what I'm feeling it in my temples, in the back of my head. It's moving stuff through the body. I am going to employ that. I think it's a really, I'm amazed at how much is moving around as a result of the bouncing in my head with my eyes closed. Wild. And Rosalind says, breath of fire, breathing exercise to move stagnant energy. Short 4-minute video, but there's a lot of other videos out there. Thank you for that, Rosalind. So breath of fire is very fast. Inhale, exhale, with a focus on the exhale. And obviously I didn't do it brilliantly. I'm sure that the videos that you'll find on YouTube and the one that Rosalind shared are much better for that. But yes, of course, the breath, you know, it's so easy to forget the breath is fundamental. That's one of our biggest sources of energy and getting unstuck, and breathing into the body and feeling that breath go all the way through and clearing things as it goes, and exhaling and removing whatever tension, stress, fatigue, negativity, all that stuff. Hello, Elaine, welcome. So Elaine says, for me, resistance is a call to go within and love myself in the moment by simply putting my hand to my heart and be present with the part of me that needs love, or and the heavy or sadness and or painful energy can move with ease and grace as the body is allowed to release and let go, and then let in the feeling lighter in the loving of oneself. We're able to do what's next with ease and grace. Amazing, amazing, Elaine. That was just beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And Robert says, like doggy breath, for the breath of fire. Yeah, in a way it is. It's a panting kind of breath. So we've talked about how to get unstuck and how to break through inertia today. It's been really fun, engaging conversation, and I am so excited to have discovered a new technique of just sort of bobbing the head to find creative new energy. So thank you guys, as always, for joining me and Maggie, although she's over destroying some of my uh, artificial plants and flowers. Um, anyway, I so appreciate this time that we spend together. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. It's such a joy and privilege to be with you. Please check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network. And until next time, get into the flow with any number of the wonderful ways we've discovered, and enjoy.